mother could not stop screaming after the realization that she had given birth. Most of the time people are not prepared for their lives to come full circle. One woman who thought she would have a normal pregnancy began to panic when she realized what was happening to her baby, a true beauty. Jenny looked forward to becoming a mother. For years she had prayed for a child, and finally she would have a daughter. Everything seemed to be in order. However, the first sign that things were going to be a little different was when Jenny's water broke at 34 weeks. That was a few weeks earlier than usual. Since the baby was small, it was decided that Jenny would have a C-section. During the C-section, everything seemed to be going well and Jenny had no problems. Her heart was lifted when she heard her daughter crying. As one of the doctors said, she was beautiful. Everything changed when she realized something about her daughter. Her skin, which should have been soft and tender, began to harden. Jenny could feel the panic of the doctors. She panicked and started screaming, asking if everything was okay. She didn't get an immediate answer. One doctor asked her if she wanted more medication, but she couldn't answer. Everything went black before she could. When she woke up, the first thing she did was ask her husband. She was told he was with her baby, and when she asked about the baby, she was given a vague answer that worried her. She was afraid that something was wrong, and she tried her best to remain calm. After a while, the doctors finally told her the news. It's a birth defect, they said. At first Jenny didn't think it was a big deal, assuming that most defects can be corrected, especially since we've come a long way in medicine. Nevertheless, the growing silence made the knot in her stomach shrink. Jenny was embarrassed when the doctors left her and her husband alone in the room. Her husband told Jenny to look into her eyes, and she had the most beautiful soul. Jenny's baby was diagnosed with harlequin's ichthyosis, a rare skin condition that the doctors at the hospital were not familiar with. When she was born, there was a lot of panic because I didn't know who was wrong. She was handed over to Jenny so she could finally hold her baby girl. But this moment could not have been the peaceful reunion she had hoped for. Jenny's emotions were on edge. She couldn't control her mind about her daughter's future. She was worried about Anna's quality of life, but she tried not to wallow in those thoughts. Everyone tried to do research on the subject, and even heard some hopeful stories. However, Jenny didn't dare to think about it too much. She had never felt so alone, but after a while she realized that she had to make a choice. That choice was to be there for her daughter. She would never forgive herself if she treated her daughter as if she were less valuable than she was. So that day her husband came to pick her up so they could see Anna together. Jenny was grateful because she knew she could always count on his support. When she went to see her daughter, nothing could have prepared her for what she was about to see. It was the first time she had ever looked Anna in the eye. Suddenly her husband's words popped into her head. Jenny. She believed her daughter was pure beauty. They were proud of her daughter's strength. Her condition meant that there were obstacles that made the job of parenting a little more demanding. There were many times when Jenny struggled to adjust to Anna's condition. Nevertheless, one fateful encounter gave Jenny the morale she needed. One day the wife of a friend of her husband's came to Jenny's house. The woman shared her story. After listening to the woman, Jenny realized how important perspective was. Just as she had once made a promise to be there for her daughter, now she made a promise to herself. She would focus on what she could have, not what she couldn't have. This mentality has shaped her journey not only as a mother, but as a person. Jenny didn't want to limit her daughter because of her disability, so she decided to raise Anna with an optimistic outlook. Jenny believed her daughter was capable of anything. Although Jenny broke the water earlier than expected, she had no problems during childbirth. Sarah wasn't so lucky. During her pregnancy, she developed a disease that caused back pain. It wasn't permanent, but in the end she had to give birth a little earlier than expected. Although Sarah was looking forward to being pregnant, things got complicated. The moment it changed, it was when the midwife said urgently that they had to pull the emergency cord. Sarah's mother and her partner Kyle stood beside her in silent support. Before she could understand what was going on, her bed was moved to the delivery room. In the midst of some serious conversation about the baby's heart rate, Sarah heard her own mother asking about Sarah. Is she okay? She said, feeling helpless. Since only one person was allowed in, Sarah's mother decided to stay outside. Kyle tried to reassure her, but she was having trouble concentrating. The contractions were getting stronger and stronger. Eventually the doctors performed an emergency C-section. As difficult as it was, Sarah couldn't wait to hold her daughter in her arms. She had dreamed of this moment for months. But the dream had to be postponed. As it turned out, Monroe, whose name Sarah had given her, was not breathing when she was born. The period after her birth was stressful. The baby had to be transferred to the ICU, and Sarah's body struggled to recover. With all these problems, things got better. Sarah had hoped for her little girl, and it was not in vain. Monroe could finally be discharged from the hospital because all of her vital signs were normal, and Sarah could finally hold her daughter perfectly normal. Cases like Sarah's are something many women have struggled with for new parents. Navigating pregnancy and the postpartum period can be confusing. There are some things that are not talked about so openly. One example of this is when a woman named Nikki gave birth to her son Graham. He was born in a way that may seem strange to other people. Babies have very soft skulls. When they are born, their heads can change shape to make the birthing process easier. Sometimes women take a little longer to push their babies out, hence this phenomenon. We may be used to the round shape of the adult skull, but it's actually quite common for newborns to have an oval head. That's what happened to Graham. His head was shaped like a cone. It took Nikki quite a while to get it out. When Graham was born and shown to the rest of the family, their immediate reaction was elation. The family wasn't worried about Graham's appearance. They were just happy. People who have seen this condition several times will tell you it is something that goes away with time. After a few days, Graham's head began to take on a shape more familiar to most people. The baby is perfectly healthy and proves that there is nothing to worry about in this condition. Emily's birth story is a little different than the ones before. While these women have experienced minor complications, or their babies have shown some striking physical features, the timing and location of where Emily broke the water make this story unusual. Emily is a doctor and was still working while she was pregnant. She felt comfortable moving around, so, for the moment, work was her priority. During one of her shifts, she was caring for a woman who was in labor. When the woman was in labor, Emily wasn't thinking about the fluid on her dress. When Emily left the room for a moment, she looked at herself. There was something about the wetness that rang a bell. Then she realized what was really going on. Her water had just broken. Knowing this, she was supposed to give birth. Soon Emily began to panic. She thought she would still have a month to prepare for the arrival of her baby. But life had other plans. One of her colleagues was surprised by the situation, but assured Emily that she would be there to help her. Emily gave birth to a premature but healthy baby boy, whom she named Jet. He stayed in the hospital for a couple of months so the doctors could monitor him. In the end, Emily credits the experience with helping her in her job. She's a doctor, but now she's also a mother. Childbirth can be a very stressful time, and she feels she can best support other women, as she has experienced their anxiety. Firsthand, all of these mothers would say that the discomfort and stress of pregnancy was worth it because they had their beautiful little children at the end of the journey. We hope you found these stories interesting, and we'll have more to share in the next video.